Good morning, everybody around the country and around the world. This is the Sunday Conversation. I'm Alan Masters. My father came home from the hospital, had a little procedure. He's doing well, and he appreciates all the holiday cards and well wishes that everybody sent him. He's got a stack of them about this big that he probably won't go through. My mom will go through all of them and go, I remember that lady or that man. It's kind of funny, even though she can't. But that's all right. He's doing well. He's a tough guy. He's a really, really tough guy. And I think that we should all hope to be that tough in our lives, you know. I'm going to be 91 in April. He was one day off of April Fool's Day, April 2nd. Today I thought I would talk about, because the holidays are upon us, I think so many people have, gotten gifts and things, and then they appreciate the gifts, but then there's a certain amount of either guilt or pressure to give something back. And my father's talked about this for most of my life. We never celebrated Christmas as kids. We just never celebrated Christmas. And the reason was my dad would say to us, if you want to give me something, you give me something. He says, because you love me, not because there's a certain day of the month or the year. He says, people miss the whole meaning of what Christmas is supposed to be. And he says, and then there's all kinds of guilt that goes along with it. He says, so we're just not going to do it. We used to think our dad was crazy as kids. We thought, what kind of an evil man doesn't do Christmas for his kids? And we'd go over at our friend's house and they would open their presents and we were like sitting there with drool coming out of our mouth, and it was really a strange thing, I have to tell you. It was really, really strange. But not knowing what that was all about and not understanding why our father would do this kind of thing. I mean, little kids, what do we know, right? It was just very strange. But we used to then go up and down. We'd ride our bikes up and down the streets, and it was odd how much people would throw away the old stuff because they got something new, and all of a sudden there's a bicycle out for the trash man because they got a new bicycle. And it was like, well, what? Look at that. And then we thought it was really funny because I don't know if you remember the kind of silver stuff they would hang on the trees, tinsel, and we would make big balls of it and throw it at each other, and we had a blast. We really had a blast, and we would get all kinds of toys and fun things out of the trash. We lived in an area that was, I think it was probably upper middle class, but I don't feel damaged by it in any way. We have a tree in our house right now that one of my kids went out into the forest and cut down, and it kind of looks like the one from Charlie Brown's Christmas. It's kind of hanging over because it's not one of those Christmas trees, and we like the smell of it, and we like kind of the festive, the lights and what have you. Here it is. Today is the 23rd of December, and there's one box under it because somebody sent us a box, and I started to open it, and I went, oh, I'm going to throw that under the tree. But we typically, with the holidays and Christmas for our kids, we buy them things they need, socks and underwears and pajamas and shirts and whatever it might be. But growing up without Christmas was a really strange thing because, as you know, that it's a cultural thing. And I have some Jewish friends that do Hanukkah, of which I still don't really know what they do on Hanukkah, but it was just really strange. But the point that I wanted to make was that I never really felt any guilt for not giving somebody something because my dad used to tell people, don't give me something now. He says, if you want to, you could give it, but do it because you want to, not because it's Christmas. So I have friends, and I was thinking this morning when I was getting ready, I thought, isn't it interesting? I have multiple friends, and none of them sent me anything, and I didn't send them anything, yet we're not any less friends. There's no guilt between us. They know that I don't go into that Christmassy thing. If I want to give somebody something, I give it to them in the moment because I want to. And I think there's a certain freedom in that. So I don't know how many different people out there that listen to my father all these years have heard him talking about Christmas, but I thought I'd let you know what my experience was. I don't really feel like I missed anything. We've done it in our house for a number of years, but like I said, on a very, very small level, and it was more about getting the family together. So as the family gets together, what happens? Trouble, which is very odd because isn't it supposed to be a merry time? Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. But when the first thing you hear from all your friends is, oh, the family's coming over. what is it about our family that is not so merry? Most of our family members think we're crazy and we think they're crazy, which is really kind of funny. But I look at it and I'm watching, as my siblings fight, just like you probably argue and fight with your siblings, or maybe like some really good friends of mine have nothing at all to do with their family members. Nothing. Zero. My brother-in-law said he hadn't seen his sister, one of his sisters, in 15 years. And I used to think, how do you not be with your family? Your family is everything. I didn't grow up with aunts and uncles that used to come over because my dad and his brother spent their whole lives arguing about religion, because my uncle was a Hasidic Jew, a rabbi at that, and my father is a Judeo-Christian, so the Jews obviously think the Christians are crazy, and the Christians kind of like the Jews a little bit, but I think there's all these differences. But so I saw my uncle once in my life, in 1968 when I was 8 years old. It's just very odd. On my mother's side, I never saw my family members on that side, because I saw my grandmother once in about 1972 or 3. She looked just like my mother does now. And so I recognized that older lady, from the first older lady that came into my life. But mostly I grew up with my father was the king of the house, and there was nobody to interfere with that. So his word was the word. And so a lot of people, especially I think Italian families, they get together. And I only know that because I grew up with several Italians, and I still have some Italian friends now. But it seems like the family unit is so broken. It's just so broken. And I look at my nuclear family, my children, and now grandchild, another one on the way, and I'm so happy. I posted a picture on my Facebook page the other day when all my kids were there, not even all of them, just a bunch of them. And one of the grandkids, and a kid that I've been bringing up since he was about 10, and he's 23 now, and he was there. And my son-in-law and my daughter and my other son and my other son. And it was just, they were kind of grouped around the kitchen, kind of like one of those paintings, Norman Rockwell. And they were all eating, and the baby was eating, and then they were feeding and laughing. And I took a picture, and I thought to myself, man, I am so blessed that my nuclear family love each other. They love each other. They love being with each other. And I think that is such a blessing, when you can live a life as broken human beings as we all are. And anybody that thinks that they are not broken is wrong. We all pretty much know we're broken. But as broken as we are, we can still create an opportunity for a family that loves each other. Or we can keep on doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different outcome, which, as you know, that's the definition of insanity. So I guess today, part of what I want to talk about is, and I said it last week, which was living with intention. The question is, what are your intentions? What are our intentions? I mean, if you have children, if you have a business, if you're alone in the world, I guess life is pretty easy because you have you and whoever happens to bump into you in your life. But what is your intention, even if you're alone, for each one of those people that you bump into in your life? And then it starts to multiply, like the ripple effect goes out farther and farther as you have children and grandchildren and family members. So I was thinking this morning about intention. And I thought, wow, people just don't give enough thought to their intentions. What are your intentions in life? What do you want to do with your life? What do you want to be? Who do you want to be like? And my dad says, don't compare yourself to anybody, except if you want to compare yourself to anybody, compare yourself to Jesus Christ. So if I want to be like somebody, I want to be like Jesus. So my intention would be to try to be like Jesus. And we talked a little bit about fake it till you make it. You see a lot of people faking it in life. We talked about the tree, how the roots are under the ground, and you really can't see. You see this beautiful trunk and the beautiful leaves, but there's a lot going on under the ground that are all the feeders that feed that tree. So what is going on underneath the surface of our lives that help us to grow fruit in our life? What does it say in the Bible? You judge a man by the fruit of his life, right? If we underneath have the knowing of our intention, my intention is to be an honest man, I don't want to lie. I don't want to twist. I was watching Jordan Peterson, Dr. Jordan Peterson. I suggest that everybody look this man up. To me, I've had him on one of my radio shows for Entrepreneur. He's a clinical psychologist. And the level of depth of understanding of human nature is so deep that it's like an endless well of knowledge about human nature and understanding. But his suffering in life, because he had some ailments and one of his kids was born with some ailments, his daughter. And I believe, and I said it the other day, that suffering is so important for us. And if we don't realize the value of suffering, each time something happened at home between me and my wife the other day, and I got so angry inside. Remember, the roots are under the ground, you can't see them. I can keep calm on the outside. But underneath, I got so angry, and I was now, she's learning me. So when I go quiet, she's like, there you go, into that dark place. And I went, damn it. She knows me now, right? Normally quiet means in control. But quiet can also mean out of control, because quiet can mean I'm taming the beast right now, right? In my quiet, because be still and know. I like to kind of go quiet so I can step back and watch the reactions that are going on. All the thoughts, because that devil wants me to catch that wave of, I'm a surfer, so he sends all kinds of swells. Each one got a perfect tube. I want to get tubed on that wave. And I have to look at all those swells of judgment. I could do this. I could say that. And every one of them, I filter it. I look at it and I go, is any good going to come from that? In a flash. And
it's really wordless though, isn't it?
It's a wordless. It's too fast for words.
What you want to do when you say that, it confuses people because it's not about you doing anything.
It's just watching. Correct.
So
good point.
You have to say the word.
Yes. It's a very good point. I'll tell you why. I'm going to liken it to
Because it makes it seem, when you say that to me, it makes it seem like you're being a puppet of yourself. And I know that's not true.
It was a good observation. And I'll liken it to a car thing. I'll tell you why. Everybody knows I'm a car guy. I've always been. It's my dad's fault. He bought British cars when I was a little kid. I heard about the new magnetic ride on the Corvette. What it is, it's like you've seen metal shavings, and they float that metal shavings in a liquid. And then the liquid, probably some sort of oil of some sort. So what happens is then that they can, through magnets, they can control the ride, the shock absorbers. And this is an interesting thing, because I remember sitting there going off inside of my head going, wow, that's how it is. That's how it is inside when we're watching. The car can feel the road and adjust the ride 500 times a second.
Wow.
It's adjusting the ride through magnetic ride control, okay? This is how we watch those waves hundreds of times in a second, because they're flashes. Just like when you meditate, if you see, my dad says you see the flash, that's life. So the point is that it isn't that I'm sitting back there having dialogues with the devil. It's happening so fast. I'm watching and observing and just being still. And then all those things are happening. If you could see it, it would probably look like a sparkler going off in my head. Because that's how it works. When those reactions are coming at you and you're just watching and you're like, I either am going to ride one of those waves and all hell's going to break loose, which then sometimes it does and you have to deal with that. But the older and wiser I get, the more I'm able to sit back. And then as soon as I saw it, it passed, because I realized that I was sitting in a toxic wasteland of anger, resentment, judgment, all those poisons that are going to kill me. What do they say? It's like taking a poison pill hoping to kill your enemy. So even though what my wife had done was just something that was not that big of a deal, but it just, you know how when they say push my button. So it pushed my button and I had a nuclear emotional meltdown, inside. And then I watched it for a few minutes and it just passed. And I thought to myself, wow, These are when my dad wrote that first book, How Your Mind Can Keep You Well. And I was thinking about this. I mean, I woke up at 3:30 this morning for some reason, checked on my dad because I have a little camera I can see in his room. And he was laying there sleeping, and then I couldn't go back to sleep, and something said to me, how your mind can keep you well. The word well, if you say things properly, how you feeling? I'm feeling good. I'm feeling well, thank you. Right? The proper way is well. So my father has become very much of a wordsmith because he's British, very carefully and thoughtfully in everything he says, and people love to hear him speak. And I was, again, back to Jordan Peterson, because as soon as Chuck sent me this thing, I started watching all these Jordan Peterson things, and I'm like, there's another wordsmith. But it's words with knowledge and wisdom to back it up. Not just knowledge. Typical scientists have knowledge. They learn it in a book, and it's knowledge. But if you put wisdom behind it, wow, what a powerful thing happens. So as we go through our lives, we can use words just kind of aimlessly, yo, baby, what's up? Hey, dude. Those are just almost like dogs barking, just noise. So when you go through your life, I think it's important to really think about the words that you use and how you use them. I'm watching two of my siblings have an argument, and I thought to myself, and I thought, it's just angry noise. Angry noise. And there's a picture in the front of the Foundation of Human Understanding in here that has the snakes coming out of the mouths, biting each other. It's a 50-year-old painting, 48 years old. And we just start to become that. So I just thought, wow, and then he wrote the book, The Secret Power of Words. And he writes all these books. If you just take the names of the books my father's written, How Your Mind Can Keep You Well. And he says now it should be How Your Mind Can Make You Well. If you're not well, then you need to make, it's the make. So anyway, but Secret Power of Words, Sex, Sin, and Salvation, How to Control Negative Emotions, How to Conquer Suffering Without Doctors. Just taking the names of the books will teach you some of the pillars of your life that you should keep an eye on. Secret Power of Words. It's interesting to me because another thing I was thinking as I was lying in bed, just thinking, what am I going to talk about today? I said to Chuck, I didn't do a very good job last week because I wasn't really well prepared. I didn't, my dad always says, never prepare, just go up there and start talking.
But you know what? That's exactly what Jordan Peterson's talk was about. So you showed up, so to speak, and felt like a fool, in a sense.
Sometimes you got to feel like a fool.
It wasn't a bad talk.
It wasn't bad.
It's leading to this talk.
That's right. Because life is a stair steps, and you're literally stepping out of the place you're at. And I'll bring you to I don't know if somebody made it, if it was true, if it was a meme, but on the internet there was a well, and a donkey had fallen in the well. You guys know this one? And it was down inside this well about 30 or 40 feet down, and in India or something, and they had no way of getting the donkey out. And the donkey was down in there going, and it was making all this noise all through the night. And so the owner of the donkey thought, I can't take it. This thing is suffering. So he went out to all his friends and said, we got to put this thing out of his misery. Let's just bury him, and we'll dig a new well. We'll just bury him. So everybody brought a bucket of dirt, and they would throw the dirt on it, and they're just throwing the dirt, and the donkey's in there, and every time he's doing, shaking the dirt off, and as the dirt came down, the donkey kept shaking it off, and the more dirt that got in there, he climbed out. So even when somebody is
God's method.
is trying to bury you, don't get angry at the guy who's trying to bury you, because he will be your way out. Sitting still and doing nothing, he would die. Shake it off and keep on going. The other one I thought was interesting, I saw another one about, have you heard the story 3 Feet from Gold?
No.
There's actually a book, and I think it's called 3 Feet from Gold. I'm not sure. I think it's Napoleon Hill. But 3 Feet from Gold is a guy found this gold mine. And he bought this gold mine from this old miner. They had gotten a certain amount of gold out of it, and he thought, well, if I get all the mining equipment, then I can bring in more gold. So he went to all his family members and he got money together and he bought all this new mining equipment. He brought it in and he started mining for gold, and all the gold started coming out, and it came out and everybody's like, yay, the money's coming out, the gold. And all of a sudden they, there's no more gold, no more gold. And all of a sudden there's no gold. And they're digging and digging and digging and no gold. And digging and digging and no gold. So he lost interest. He was like, oh my gosh, I just got to stop. I got to stop. And so he went down to the junk dealer and said, all right, I got this used mining equipment and this mine that is, the gold went out, and it's just, and the guy made him a cheap offer on it, and he bought the whole thing for next to nothing. And he brought in an expert. And the expert looked and he says, all right, well, I think if you dig this way, you're going to hit another vein, because gold runs in certain veins. And so he started digging that way, and he hit one of the biggest gold finds in U.S. history. Now, I don't know whether that's a true story or it's just a story, but it was 3 feet. And so the story is 3 feet from gold. In other words, don't stop digging.
Yeah.
Keep going. That's your life. You may be just 3 feet from gold. And if you give up and you throw your hands up and say, oh, I'm never going to be anything, I'm never going to, never, ever give up like that. That's 3 feet from gold. So, wasn't it 40 days and 40 nights of rain for Noah? Right? Wasn't it 40 years in the desert for the Jews coming out of Egypt? It's my 40th year since my dad ordained me as a minister. You know, all those years of suffering for the Jews, 40 years, it was to purify all the ones that had sinned and done all the wrong things and worshiped wrong gods, and 40 days of rain to just cover the earth with water. And in my life now, it's been 40 years of living. And I thought, I wonder if there's anything about 40 years. Now I have to go look that one up. But I thought, here I am in this role now, and I said to my wife, I said, hey, you want to come to the talk? She goes, no, I don't want to. I go, you could come up and sit and talk with me. No, I don't. And I thought, I'm going to have that same determination in my life that my father has, which I've had anyway in my own business. But now with the foundation, with the FHU Legacy Project, which I feel is a very big opportunity for all of you listening and watching, is that we can mine all of the good things that my father has done for this last 55 or 60 years of his life, which is to bring that all to the surface and make it into categories so it's searchable and findable. Because we don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's been said over and over and over again. It's many, many books have been written about it.
Can I just say something? Jordan Peterson is having such an influence on people. I think he's preparing the way so people can understand Roy better.
Yeah, I would love to set up a Jordan Peterson talk for the FHU world, because in talking with him, I got a chance to do an hour-long interview with Jordan Peterson. And I, of course, did an hour and a half, because I did a half an hour in the beginning, just to find out a little bit about him. And he was fearless. I go, is there anything I shouldn't ask you? He says, no. Is there any area I shouldn't go? Nope. The guy just is fearless. Of course, he has all his academic knowledge to back up what he knows about the human creature, but then he has the fearless innocence to just move forward. You know what they say when you're going through hell? Keep going. So much of it is the same as what my father says. And, you know, you watch him, he doesn't react. The one big interview he did was with a woman that was doing an interview with him, and he just kind of said something that was so obvious and innocent in the way he responded, and she was speechless, because this man is in the same way, in much ways like my father, is just innocent. And so he says, well, you know, it had to do with gender equality or something, and She says, what about the way you talk is insulting to some people? He says, well, but isn't that insulting the way, you could be insulting me? What gives you the right to do that? Just the answers were so simple. So many times the scientific world wants to use science to answer the questions, and this man, he has the background of science, but it's like the first foot deep is just this innocent young boy that has an amazing amount of knowledge, but it's front-loaded with wisdom. And that's the beauty of it. It's like, he's got the knowledge, he can pull it out like that, the knowledge of the science of everything. But it's just, life is so simple. I watched a little thing about relationships, and how many of us have had relationship problems with our husband or wife? And I thought, Dr. Oz asked him a question, and it was like, let's see how he answers that one. And I love the simplicity of it. It's almost like watching a 10-year-old boy tell another 10-year-old boy or girl an answer to something that maybe seemed complex, but 10-year-olds communicate in an innocence and a simplicity because they don't have all the confusion. The amazing thing is that normally all of that scientific stuff confuses the childlike mind. And this man has somehow risen above that. So I couldn't say enough good things about Jordan Peterson. And again, I'm going to bring it back to, I was thinking about reaction because of that reaction I had to this little thing that happened to my wife. If you're living with intent, with the intent to emulate Christ, which is to not get angered and not overreact and fall prey to reaction, you look at these things, you stand back, and it happens very quickly. And I thought to myself, how many people out there, how many people watching live their life each day watching all those reactions? Or are we just existing? Are we just existing, living in this body that's carrying us around, bumping into things? Yo, what's up? Hey, man, give me another Red Bull. It's just this world of mindlessness. And that's a good way to say it. It is mindlessness, what we put in our mouths and what comes out of our mouths. It's very interesting. And I thought to myself, you know what? There needs to be a moment of us dwelling on this just to make sure that it sinks in a little bit. Your reactions will kill you or make you live. That choice is yours. Your overreaction, your reaction to somebody tempting you, kills you a little bit if you overreact and if you react in the wrong way, or helps you to grow and helps you to help that person if you react in the right way. And I'll give you a moment of something that happened. My son-in-law came over to me the other day and he was angry about something that happened. It was about something that happened with my son. So I have a son and a son-in-law. I love them both. This argument was kind of trying its best to happen. He wanted to get me to see his point of view. And because he's my son-in-law, the father of my grandson, and he was angry at something that happened to my son, who was about to have my second grandson, I found myself right square in the middle, and I thought, great wisdom is required right here. So the next level of your life will require a brand new you. To move to that next level, a brand new you has to be born. Born out of the desire to be like Christ, which is to not just react. So, he said this, and that, and this is not right, and that's not right. And I just kind of watched, and I said, I see and hear your point of view. But that's not my point of view. That's your point of view. From his point of view, he may have been right. From his point of view. But see, it's my decision on how I deal with things that are happening in my life. So I said to him, in this case, I will do the right thing. I hear you. I thank you for your point of view. But now you need to leave it with me and let me do the right thing as far as my point of view. I hear your point of view. So since I didn't get angry, since I didn't react, since I didn't give in to the temptation, because there was a little bit of right. Because everything is always built, an argument is built on a little bit of truth, little tiny seed of truth that has been poisoned by all kinds of stuff. So he left, and he came back the next day, and I let it go. I remember thinking to myself, I'm so glad that I had the wherewithal and the wisdom to not react and to just simply say, thank you. There's a certain level of maturity that I am trying to achieve, just like all of you are, trying to achieve the ability to be in control. So he came back the next day and he sat down on the couch next to me and he says, listen, I just want to apologize about yesterday. And, I said, well, aren't you glad I didn't react? He says, yeah, really glad. Because see, what would have happened, imagine if I would have rode the wave that he was riding. It would have been 2 against 1. The one that's the innocent didn't even know what was going on. It was the point of view of the other guy. And if I would have just jumped on that and said, yeah, you're right, what the hell? See, that's just the reaction, riding the wave with kind of thoughtless. So what happened was I said to him, listen, my job is to do the right thing because it's right. And that's the most important thing, because it's right. But then what happens after that is the ripple effect, that now that light shined into his heart, and now he knows how to do it right. Just like I was telling you, my dad the other day, some little silly thing happened, and he called me and he says, I apologize. And I have to tell you, I got some comments on that. Because an apology without excuses is pure. So then I had a chance to apologize to somebody, and I just said, you know what, I apologize. And they went, what? Because apologies are always have strings attached. Just like Christmas presents, strings attached. We need to learn how to be more pure and Christ-like. Because wouldn't it have been nice to be around Christ, Jesus Christ? What a man he must have been. No excuses. I mean, I'm guessing, right? We have to assume he's the Son of God, right? But if we can try, even if we, I said it the other day, if we're fake it till we make it, because as we go down that road, if we just try and give it a try, what the hell? What do we got to lose? Let's try to be gracious. Let's try to be unselfish. And as we do that, we can go, wow, that felt right. There's something to that. All I can say is that as we move in that direction, and as we think, as a man thinketh, so shall he be. So as we stay focused on intent, my intent is to be more Christ-like every day. Each day, a little more than the next, even if it's a grain of sand. One grain of sand. At the end, I have an hourglass, and it's filling up. Here I am, 40 years. My dad ordained me when I was 18 years old. And I remember thinking, cool, I'm a minister. But I didn't do anything with it for about 20 years until somebody asked me to marry them, and I married them, got my license properly. But I told them, I said, marriage, you do this one time, otherwise I'm not going to do it. So I've married about 5 people, and they're all still married. I'm very proud of that, because that's a big deal. But 5 out of 7 billion is a small number. So I just feel like, look, today I just wanted to get up here, wear my suit that I wore on TV last time, and try to move in that direction again. Try to bring something to the table for those watching or listening in our tiny little studio here in Grants Pass, Oregon. And I said, just like what did God said to, who was it? If you can even find one in Sodom and Gomorrah, who was it that was? Lot. Yeah, Lot. So I thought, even if one person shows up, and I knew Fabian was going to get here, I thought, I'm going to be sitting here talking to Fabian. But all that matters is there's a lot of people that learn and listen a little bit, and I learn from sitting up here. And I feel like, wow, what a beautiful opportunity to grow today for me. What a wonderful opportunity for me to come a tiny bit closer to my inner Alan. That inner self, that inner child that's inside of me that really wants to be seen for that little boy that didn't have the sin, that didn't have, the 40, 50 years of life compressed inside of my self that I'm holding inside, waiting to explode on some loved one, unfortunately, right? So as you get rid of that and you realize you can just let it go, you don't have to hold on to it. There was the meme of the butterfly that had a string tied to a big rock, and it was flapping its wings, and it said, let stuff go. Because you're not going to be able to fly until you let stuff go. And man, is it hard to let stuff go. Somebody does something wrong to you. Wrong. I'm a student of life, and somebody said something about making your bed in the morning. For whatever reason, a husband has a wife, the wife should make the bed. So I got up, and the other day, my wife wasn't feeling well, so she slept in this big easy chair, and I got up in the middle of the night. I go, what are you doing? She says, I just have a headache, and I just felt like sleeping sitting up a little bit. And so I said, okay, well, you need anything? No. So I went back to bed, and I woke up the next morning, and I thought, I'm going to make the bed. And something inside said, what are you going to make the bed for? You don't do the wife make the bed. Again, the waves, right? You're the man of the house. You paid for the house. So I just said, shut up. And I made the bed. And I stood there and looked at the bed, and I went, I made the bed. I remember doing that when I peed the bed. That was a whole other story. But I made the bed, and I thought to myself, I don't know why, but that felt right. It felt right to put a little order in my day from the beginning. So the next day I got up, and I said, I'm going to make the bed. And I made the bed. And my wife had got up earlier to let the dog out or something, and so she has not said a word to me. And she won't watch this, so I know. But I'm seeing myself. It's like the doors of graciousness are opening because we want to be gracious. We really, truly want to be gracious human beings. But something keeps us from that. Some pride. If you could see it, it's like, it's the ugly thing inside of there that blocks the door to just being gracious. What happened to the man holding the door open for the lady? Oh, it's not PC to do that anymore. The lady should hold the door open for the man because equality. I have always held the door open for ladies. I go out of my way to say, no, here, you can go ahead of me. I was at Costco yesterday, and I was in line, and I had one thing that I was holding. I had maple syrup, and I'm standing there, and everybody's got these giant carts. I had one thing, and Christmas, and it's full. And my wife, I'm like, where are you? I'm holding the space in line. There was this little family behind me. So she comes walking up, and I'm like, my space. I held it. I have one thing. And I said, here, why don't you guys go ahead? My wife's right behind you. And they were like, oh, thank you. But the interesting feelings inside, just to be gracious a little tiny bit. What is it? What is it? Gracious is good. What is it about? I got to win the race. I got to drive the fastest. I got to catch that parking space. I got to cut that guy off. I got to get in line ahead of that guy. Whatever it is, we are so competitive and so selfish. What is it about us that we are such selfish creatures? Hoarders. Mine. My kids always tell me I'm a hoarder. I'm a tool hoarder, thing hoarder, penny. We were walking through, and there was a shiny penny on the ground, and I don't know where it was, in a train station or something. And I go, penny, and my son kicks it. And I went, what are you doing? It's a penny. And I chased it over, and I picked it up, and I go, shiny penny, put it in my pocket. It's a principle. And he's like, Dad. So I don't know, it's like, I'm weird. But I'm watching, I'm trying to watch all these things. Just watch. Just watch. So I'm watching my hoarding, because I think, like, Chuck made these steps over here out of some old cabinets that came out of a building 27 years ago. He's like, I've got steps made out of old cabinets now. And it's like we share that thing. It's like, I'm not going to throw that away. My kids will take it out in the field and burn it. They're like, you done with that? I'm like, yeah, what are you going to do with it? I've learned this. What are you going to do with it? Oh, we're going to burn it. Why are you going to burn the kitchen cabinets we just took out? We'll put them in another house somewhere. You know, but I come from a different conservative side of the world.
It's called being Jewish.
It's called being Jewish. Thank you. Thank you.
It's weird how even, Christmas and how that's really been twisted and turned into a selfish thing. Like, because I remember as a kid, we weren't aware of Jesus. It was all about getting new skates.
Right.
And, when I anticipated, the morning to open up the presents, and it had nothing to do, and I realized the other day that it really is a gift that's been given to mankind. The gift has been given to us. And it's
well, what we did, we've perverted what the original meaning of celebrating the birth of Christ. We perverted it and made it a selfish thing. And somebody said to me, I've never heard of this. Have you heard of selfish Santa?
No.
Oh my gosh. Somebody said, we do selfish Santa. And I go, well, what's that? I've heard of a gray elephant or whatever, where you pass it around, everybody tries to take it, and it's a game. Selfish Santa is where you buy yourself what the hell you want. To hell with everybody else. I'm buying my present, you buy yours, I'm going to buy myself with the money I would spend on you and you and you, I'm going to buy it for myself. I buy myself everything like that all the way anyway, all the time. But I feel like it's been perverted so much so that that's the problem with the whole thing. And then there's all kinds of other offshoot perversions that come out of it. The guilt trip that goes along with it and all the rest, the pressure.
I really like your story about the 3 feet to gold. Man, I really, that's so true.
Who has read the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill? Anybody? So here's another book. If you want to read an interesting book, Napoleon Hill is an author from the early 1900s who went to, I think it was Dale Carnegie, and said, I want to interview you. I want to interview multiple millionaires of the time, which a millionaire of those times would be like a billionaire today. So he went to all these millionaires, and those kind of millionaires back in the early 1900s, they were real industrious people, if you know what I'm saying, because that was a tough time in history. He interviewed them, and Dale Carnegie says, I want you, Mr. Napoleon Hill, to go and interview all the millionaires you can find and find out what the secret is to their success. I'll pay you to do that. And he thought, it's a novel idea. So he wrote this book called Think and Grow Rich. And when my friends told me about it at first, I thought, Think and Grow Rich? Well, there's a little bit of a hook there because, if you only want to get rich, it could have been called Get Rich Quick, right? But the fact that it's called Think and Grow Rich is the twist to it. And I'll give you a tiny, tiny little bit. He gives a little story from each person. So if everybody in this room had one page of the secret of their whole life success, this whole book of it is of people's successes. But it all comes back to the simplest things in life, is kind of the core, the pillars of decency, honesty, hard work. Those are the cornerstones of your life. And those are what help those people, those principles, to become rich, wealthy. And so he puts this all together, and each time you're like, okay, you turn the page and you go, yeah, that was simple. And you read the next story and you go, that was pretty simple too. And as you read and turn the pages and all these stories of all these people, that it was all the simple, hard work, honesty, integrity, the basics. And it's just a beautiful book. So I suggest, if you want, and I think 3 Feet from Gold is another one of the books.
A lot of my life I was pretty kind of stuck and lazy, and as I started to awaken, I did get stuck, in a space where I was like that butterfly that was tied, and I had a certain amount of awakeness, but I was always tied. I couldn't break free, and that's why I was drawn here. I know there was some hidden emotion that I thought was strength.
Well, emotion feels like strength.
Right.
Isn't that interesting?
Yes.
Anger feels like strength,
It does.
but it's an unnatural strength, and it's an unhuman strength.
Well, it kept me tied. It kept me tied so that I couldn't,
Right,
really.
but what happens is you become, if you allow that strength, we'll call it strength because it really isn't. It's a fake strength.
Right.
You are actually feeding the dark side, and it becomes stronger. To this. The two wolves are fighting, and the little Indian boy says to the chief, grandfather, which wolf wins? He says, the one you feed. So if you feed the anger that feels like strength, that's the one that will win, and you will become an angry person that feels strong, and all anybody else feels from you is that angry strength. And it is a repulsive thing when other people can look at you. You can't see it in yourself. You feel puffed up and strong.
Right.
So it's an important thing to make sure that we feed the right side of ourselves. You were talking about, when you were younger, what happens is that so many people in their lives have been accidentally damaged, collateral damage to, as my father says, your mother, her mother before her father, his father before him. Doesn't matter. It is parents, their parents before them, so on and so forth. All the way back to Cain and Abel, right? We are all collateral damage. And at some point, it is up to us to help ourselves by recognizing this is not good. I want to be the weakest link in that chain, right? And the only way I can get out of that is to have a journey towards being Christ-like. And so I always tell people, they're like, well, where do you start? Wow, that's, where do you start? Everybody starts in a different place. But I think, of course, my father's teachings, his first book, I said, Dad, which book should we start with? And my dad looks at the person and he says, I think you should have this one. And I'm like, that's not fair. I want them numbered. No, start with number 1 and then do number 2. Because each one of us have different things. So really that's why he wrote 22 books. Because you may have this part of your life handled, but this part over here needs some serious work. So you have to find on your own, where is your weakest link that keeps you chained to that chain of effects that happen through your whole life. So I think we'll conclude with gratitude. Because I feel like if there is a supernatural power that we can have over darkness, it's gratitude. And I said the other day, from the time you wake up, and I'll give myself as an example. I woke up at 3:45 this morning. I don't know why, I just woke up. Sitting on this stage, if there's 1 or 1,000 or 1,000,000 people watching, it doesn't matter. Sitting on a stage has a certain amount of angst to it. So I thought, well, what am I going to talk about? I should really have something ready to talk about. That's the intellectual side of my mind that wants to be prepared. And I thought, dang it, it's 3:45. I thought, but wait a minute, I could check on my dad. Maybe he's in distress. And this is God sending me a note. Check on your dad. Because there's been times in my dad's life that he was in distress, and I felt it. One time he went for a jog when I had just gotten my driver's license. He went for a jog, which is funny thinking of my dad jogging all the way 42 years ago. And he jogged quite far. But I remember saying to my mom, where's Dad? It was Saturday. And she says, oh, he went for a jog. And I was like, well, I remember when he left, and he's been gone a long time. So I said, I'm going to go look for him. Don't know why. Had a feeling. So I went driving around, drove all around. Couldn't find him down near the beach. No. And I thought, maybe he jogged uphill. Who jogs uphill? I want to jog downhill. He jogged uphill, and it was like 3 or 4 miles away. And I'm driving along, and I see my dad sitting on a lawn with his shoe off, holding his foot. And I pulled up next to the curb, and I was in a Volkswagen Thing, top down. And I go, what are you doing? He says, why are you here? And I said, I don't know. I just had a feeling I should come looking for you. And he says, isn't that interesting? I sprained my ankle. And so he got up and hopped over to the car and got in the car and I took him home. He still reminds me of that to this day. That I got the premonition. And then one time when he was in the hospital, when he had open heart surgery, he was in distress. And I went in there and I actually threatened to call 911. Actually, they threatened to call the police. I said, you better call 911 because you're going to need the SWAT team to get me out of here. And when he came out of heart surgery, the oxygen level was too low. He just was doing this. That's all he could do. He was tied down. He had tubes going down his throat. And I had to figure out what the hell that meant. So I made him get the doctor and come out, bring the doctor out of bed. Doctor came there in his slippers and his robe to the hospital. And he says, who did this? Who set this up? He was right. He said, you saved your father's life. He would have had brain damage, not enough oxygen. So I've had these, so I thought, maybe God is giving me a premonition at 3:45 in the morning. I checked on him and he was sleeping. And I thought, okay. And I thought about what I said to you guys last week. Wake up and have gratitude that you're awake and that you're alive and that you can be thankful. So I sat there, laid there, and I thought, I'm going to watch Jordan Peterson. No, I mean, it's like you can wake up in the morning, you can wake up late, you can do whatever you want, but when you wake up, if you just give a thought of being grateful for the day, your day will go better. Make the bed. Try that. I know you're not going to try it. But try it. Try a few little things. Fake it till you make it. Watch your reactions when you're doing these things. I have another thing that happened this morning. The dishes. I have locusts at my house, big ones, teenage locusts, and some real big ones. And they eat and then they leave their mess everywhere. And I thought, the dishes still aren't cleaned. And there was a big pile. And I thought, she needs to clean those dishes. So I need to go home and clean those dishes. Because I need to be gracious. Why not? Why not? She doesn't feel good. She works her tail off. I work my tail off, but I got extra tail. So I want to be more gracious. I hope you guys will join me. Thank you for watching and listening, and please support the foundation. We have the FHU Legacy Project that we are going to be doing, and it's going to be a big undertaking. It'll take years, and hopefully for your children or grandchildren and my grandchildren, because my children are going to say, that's just Dad, the way I did. A lot of good has come out of my father, and I hope to be able to do some of that same with you guys' help, and hope that you guys can help me to do good for others. Okay? Thank you very much for watching.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.